Hello, my friends. Teresa Shields Parker here. You know, I truly love chatting with you each week, and I do wish there was a way that we could actually have a two-way conversation. Actually, there is a way we can do that. If you come into my Overcomers Christian Weight Loss Academy, you can ask me any question in that Facebook group, or during our monthly Overcomers Zoom meeting, we can do like a face-to-face if you have a video on your camera or on your phone and you can get on to the call at the time that we're on, we can actually talk. I deal one-on-one with the members who are on there that really want some more in-depth kind of answers to their question. And really, I even have a woman this last month. I had a woman from Australia who's in our group who set her clock to join us. Although it's morning over there, I think she's joined maybe 2 or 3 times. And another member who is, I think she's in the UK. Anyway, it was the middle of the night for her, and she set her clock and joined us. So I love my group, I really do, and I'll have the link down in the show notes for the page that gives you all the information and tells you how you can join too. This is a good time to join. I know we're in the middle of this pandemic or whatever you want to call it, but we've got time, right? We've got time now to focus on what really matters, which is our health. Now, before we get started with the podcast, I want to just say thanks to a bunch of new folks who've added reviews to the podcast. And one came from Ann. She just said Ann from CA. So I guess she's Ann from California. And here's what she says. I accidentally stumbled upon Teresa's podcast while searching for a Christian weight loss food addiction program. I loved it from the start and listened to all the episodes over a period of a few weeks. I look forward to hearing the new ones come through. Teresa speaks clearly and in a structured way that makes it easy to understand and follow. She sprinkles good humor through her talk, thanks a lot, and keeps one's interest. I have been blessed by this podcast as I struggle through my weight loss challenges. Now, Anne titled her review, Inspiration to Keep Going. And that's exactly what I hope I'm doing by providing this podcast. I'm giving you inspiration for all y'all out there who are on your healthy living journeys, really trying to tap into God's strength during this time. I'm there to keep you going, and I'm rooting for you, okay? I do want to talk today about the magnificent, amazing, undeserved, exceptionally powerful, sweet, sweet grace of God. It's really something we take for granted and don't really understand that much. Or maybe it was just that I didn't understand it very much before I started my weight loss journey. Because I'd been saved when I was 7, so how much can you learn at that time, right? But I titled my first book, Sweet Grace, because during this time period of really tapping into what God wanted me to do, I understood that grace was all at the center of it. It's sweet, but that's the reason I titled my book Sweet Grace. But it's also because he gave me grace for all the times I ate all the sugary treats and the things that I knew I really shouldn't be eating, when I knew that he had clearly told me that sugar and flour and things made with those were the main source of my ridiculous weight gain up to at least 430 pounds. My sister tells me that she remembers a time that I weighed even more than that. And there probably was a time but I didn't want to know what the weight was. So I want to talk about how grace, this very basic concept of grace, changed my world. Now, maybe you'll understand a bit better about how it changed yours as well, or at least maybe you'll understand how grace keeps you and can keep you on your healthy living journey, and the power that is resident in this concept that we call grace. You know, grace is really the multifaceted aspect of God that defines his nature and underlies everything about him. Everything he does, everything he is all wrapped up in that word grace. It's the engine that drives his purpose here on earth to help us move at what I call grace speed, which is definitely different from any other earthly speed. You know, for at least I'd say 50 years, you know, I thought grace was just something that happened when I was 7 and got saved. I mean, that was the only purpose for it, right? Grace for salvation. If it is only that, it would be enough in and of itself, because it translated me from death to life. I was headed in one direction. I was destined for an eternity living apart from God. And when I accepted his grace and asked him into my life, I was changed, translated to a life of eternity with God. I didn't understand the power of that then. You know, I didn't understand the concept, but you know, I was 7, I think, when I stole candy from the grocery store, and that act made me realize I was a thief and the wretch that the evangelist hollered about during revival services, or the preacher every Sunday night. But that's all it was to me, just an act. I knew that God was perfect and that no sin can enter heaven. I knew that concept. I had knowingly committed sin by stealing candy. Therefore, I would not go to heaven unless I accepted Christ's sacrifice for my extreme failure, which, you know, when I repented of that failure, of that sin, which right then was just stealing candy from the grocery store, penny candy actually, and asked God to forgive me and asked Jesus to save me, the power of grace did something truly amazing. Like I said, it transferred me from the column labeled eternal separation from God to forever with God. I moved from being destined towards a sure death to being bound for eternity in heaven. Just thinking about that now is more than astounding, really. That alone is life-changing. You know, but I was just a kid. I'd never known life without going to church every Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, sometimes Friday nights. So in reality, nothing dramatic changed for me in my everyday world. I was just happy that I wasn't going to hell for taking that penny candy when my dad wouldn't give me a dime. Still, that day, God's free gift of grace opened the door for me to have a close relationship with him. One where I could talk right to him. I could walk right into the throne room. I could share my deepest thoughts and fears and concerns with him. I had access to the God of the universe. Out of his great love for me, he covered all my failures, past, present, and future. He did this so I would be free to follow him. Now, it was a foundational relationship of grace and love because he loved me and desired that I love him in return. But loving him was not an obligation. I still had to make the choice to follow him. But now I had his spirit living in me. Once I accepted Christ, his spirit came and lived in me, and I was free to make the choice to follow Jesus in everything. And his grace compelled me to follow him, to make right choices so that I would be living within his will. But, God always makes these redemptive moves for us because he knew my tendencies. He knew even before I stole candy from the grocery store that sugar would be a barrier to me following him completely. He knew one day I would choose sugar over him. Yet when I came to him, he didn't hesitate. With open arms, he gave me grace that covered all my failures, past, present, and future. Ephesians 1:7-8, Common English Bible says it this way: we have been ransomed through his son's blood, and we have forgiveness for our failures based on his overflowing grace, which he poured over us with wisdom and understanding. So because of Jesus' life, death, burial, and resurrection, I have forgiveness for my failures based on this overflowing grace. And it wasn't just his grace that he poured over me, but it was also this wisdom and understanding of knowing who I am and what I would do, which would be against him, and how he would be able to rescue me and turn me around. But if I were God, I'd not do salvation or grace or any of that stuff that way. No. I'd legislate that if a person says they want to follow me, they would have to show by their actions that they are fully committed to following me and to doing everything I want them to do. I'd have this period of time where they'd be closely watched, and if they didn't toe the mark and do what I said, they'd be out. God, though, doesn't operate that way, and I'm so glad he doesn't. When I made the initial response to him, he wanted my continued relationship with him to be my choice. So he covered me with his grace in the midst of all of my struggles to figure out how to follow him correctly, how to honor God with my body, how to take care of the very temple of the Holy Spirit, which is this body that he lives in. For many years, I thought of God like I'm in this tug of war with him. I'm still wanting to do my own thing, like eat everything I want. And I thought he was pulling against me, trying to pull me along and make me do his bidding. But that is the farthest thing from the truth. Many times, I was wanting his stamp of approval on what I wanted to do, how I wanted to eat, how I felt I needed comfort foods and sugar to get me through my day. I wanted him to help me lose weight and let me eat all the things I wanted at the same time. I wanted him to do this miracle in me that would allow me to indulge and still lose weight. And I know there are many out there who feel the same way I do. I know that's what we're looking for in every diet we go on. We want a diet that tells us, hey, you can eat whatever you want of this foods and you can lose weight too. But God wants us to follow him. And he'd already told me how to do that, how to lose weight. He had showed me that my issue was eating things made with processed sugar and flour, and which is high carbohydrate content, and that I needed to stop doing that and focus on eating meats, fruits, and vegetables. But he wasn't tugging me along. But I was pulling against him. His end of the rope, though, was slack. He's not tugging on it. He was not trying to drag me over to his side, kicking and screaming. That's not God's way. He let me play my own game until I finally became utterly exhausted, spent, and at the end of the rope. So at the end of our rope is always where we will want to turn to God. And he is always there. He never leaves us. If we have committed to him, he commits to us, even though we're not showing our commitment to him. He doesn't judge us, doesn't condemn us. He's always waiting for us to come back to him, to ask him, how do I do this? And then accept his strength to do it. It's kind of like the prodigal son. So all of a sudden I looked around and realized I'm living in a pig pen here. And I realized how much I needed God to set me right, no matter what it took. It couldn't be any worse than living tired, overwhelmed, and exhausted from carrying around all the extra weight, plus the tons of emotional baggage that I had, and which was the reason I was eating the wrong foods in the first place, to assuage or anesthetize those negative emotions. And I didn't know what to do with that baggage. I didn't know how to get rid of it. So I just dropped the end of the rope I'd been tugging against. And when I did that, he welcomed me back with open arms. It's just like it says in Luke 15:20, in the story of the prodigal son. So he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. And that's just what I did. As I got closer to him, he ran to meet me. I was never alone. He was just waiting for me to come home, and that's what he's doing with you, my friend. He's waiting for you to come home to him, no matter what the issue is. He knew that I was going to comfort foods, desserts, and fast foods for comfort and sustenance. He also knew that those things were never designed to provide me with comfort and will never sustain me. They are not the right fuel for my body. And he knew that my eyes were so blinded by this lifelong struggle that I had been in that I didn't remember what it even felt like to be comforted by the God of the universe, to fall into his arms and just be held by him. No greater comfort in the world, no greater feeling in the world than to know that God cares about me and he cares about you, my friend. So he embraced me and I remembered. Yeah, I remembered what it felt like to be so close to him that nothing else in the world mattered. I remembered what it felt like to be held close. I remembered what it felt like to be wrapped in his arms of comfort and love. Why did I ever search for that anywhere else but in him? Close to the Father, wrapped in the Spirit, led by Jesus. It's from this foundation that my real journey began, and this is where I say grace changed my world once again. It changed my world when I was 7, changed my eternal destiny. But this is where my real journey with him began. You know, he pulled gifts from his huge storehouse just for me. He lavished them on me, gifts like prophecy and faith and serving and teaching and encouraging and giving and leading and kindness and love and hospitality and so many, many more. Romans 12, 6 through 8 says it this way. In his grace, God has given us different gifts for doing certain things well. So if God has given you the ability to prophesy, speak out with as much faith as God has given you. If your gift is serving others, serve them well. If you are a teacher, teach well. If your gift is to encourage others, be encouraging. If it is giving, give generously. If God has given you leadership ability, take the responsibility seriously. And if you have a gift for showing kindness to others, do it gladly. The particular individualized gifts that he chooses for me are not a reward, but they're a way to help me on the journey, to give me tools to walk out my journey. He knows I am now able to take this journey because it's a journey towards my destiny. He's gifted me. He's accepted me back into the fold, and he's ready to lead me because he knows I've finally surrendered to him completely. Even the adult sins that I had, the childish sins are gone away. I didn't steal anymore, but I sure ate candy again. And that's the thing I had to surrender. You know, God has big plans for me and for you, my friend. He knows, he knows that he has plans for our good and not our disaster, like it says in Jeremiah 29:11. And there are plans for our future and our hope, plans for all of the people that come after us, our ancestors. We're setting up something in the world right now. And he is leading us to do that. Grace is how he does that, because he gave us grace. And with the grace, he wiped out all of that other stuff that I did. And he said, let's start over and let's go from here. Without grace, as a believer, my destiny would not be mine. If God legislated how I should act and what I should do in order to earn my future or earn a position of some kind, I would be his robot in some kind of cosmic episode. He would be the dictator, the supreme dictator, but that's not who God is. He is grace, and that is so different from being a dictator. I think of it kind of in terms of when I'm thinking about my love for my children. You know, I've heard mothers say to their kids, you have to love me because I'm your mother. You know, I have gone out of my way not to say that to my children because I know they do not have to love me. But with every fabric of my being, I want them to. I want their love. I want them to choose to love me. That means I have to stay true to my love for them and my promises to them. They have to trust me even now as they are adults. And that's still so important that we have that open kind of trust and love relationship. This is a crucial part of God's plan also, the choice that he gives us. He wants a people who choose to love him, not who are legislated to love him. 1 John 4:19 says, we love him because he first loved us. He made the first move, friends, and continues to love us with an everlasting love. Grace allows the choice for me to love him to be mine. I mean, it has to be mine. I have to choose it, but I am free to choose. Even though I belong to him, I am not obligated to choose God's ways and thereby try to earn the right to enter into heaven. Doesn't work that way. I've already been grafted in by grace. However, I am thankful that there was a time when I chose to follow God's ways. I finally realized that I didn't have the strength to do what he wanted me to do. When I admitted that I am weak and willingly surrendered to him, I found God not only met me there, but walked with me through my journey. He actually propelled me forward into greater abundance than I've ever known before. So he tells it to Paul like this in 2 Corinthians 12:9, and this is the Amplified. God says, my grace is sufficient for you. My loving kindness and my mercy are more than enough, always available, regardless of the situation. For my power is being perfected and is completed and shows itself most effectively in your weakness. Now, God was talking to Paul. Paul had asked him to remove a thorn in his flesh. He'd asked him 3 times to do that. We don't know what the thorn was. We don't know what Paul's weakness was. But he really was entreating God, if you'll take this away, it'll be a lot better. And God said, no, it's there for a purpose. It shows itself, his power. He said, only when you admit that you can't do it and you stop striving to make everything happen for yourself, only then is my power perfected, is completed, shows itself most effectively because of your weakness. And then Paul answers him and says, therefore, I will all the more gladly boast in my weakness, so that the power of Christ may completely enfold me and may dwell in me. So I am well pleased with weaknesses, with insults, with distresses, with persecutions, and with difficulties for the sake of Christ. For when I am weak in human strength, then I am truly strong, truly powerful, truly drawing from God's strength. It's so amazing to me that God is strong all the time. He's all powerful. He is strength. That's a definition of God. But when I stop trying to fix my own problems and agree to do things his way, that's when his strength shows itself most effectively in my life. I am weak because I'm human, and so are you. Stop trying to tell yourself you're strong. You're not, okay? You have some strength, but it's limited to your humanity. It's in admitting that we are weak and understanding we have no strength, or at least we don't have the strength to overcome this addiction that we have inserted ourselves into, because really is our choice when it comes to addiction. Addiction doesn't overtake us. We accept it for a reason. It's only when I understand I'm weak and understand I have no strength and realize that what I do have is the supernatural strength of God, a power no human can match. That's when his strength becomes totally available to me. Now, this still doesn't mean that all my problems disappear and everything magically goes my way. What it does mean is that I finally understand how to be more connected to God. And in that connection with him, I find my purpose spelled out in ways that even today continue to blow my mind. Paul explains God's love even more when speaking to the church at Ephesus in Ephesians 3:15-21. This is in the Message. I ask him that with both feet planted firmly on love, you'll be able to take in with all followers of Jesus the extravagant dimensions of Christ's love. Reach out and experience the breadth, test its length, plumb its depths, rise to the heights, live full lives, full in the fullness of God. God can do anything, far more than you could ever imagine or guess or request in your wildest dreams. He does it not by pushing us around, but by working within us, his Spirit deeply and gently within us. Grace is power and love. That combination is what propels us forward. I do so love Chris Valentin's definition of grace. He says, grace is the operational power of God to do what you couldn't do 1 second before. That is so true in my life. I couldn't lose weight on my own. I couldn't follow what God wanted me to do. I needed him to guide me. I needed him to take me to a mentor and to a group of people that were on my same journey, that would be people that would encourage and support me on the journey and lead me forward. I needed that in my life. I needed him to be the one who showed me what to do, but I also needed the support of others who could speak into my life. The reason for grace being the power is simple. God promotes his purposes here on the earth. It's how he does that. His purpose is for everyone to come to the knowledge of Christ. In his grace, he gives us the power or the ability to complete whatever section of that task is assigned to us. He gives us gifts that are for that specific purpose. So it tells us that in 1 Peter 4:10-11. And it says, as each one has received a special gift, employ it in serving one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. See, it's the grace of God that gives these gifts. Whoever speaks is to do so as one who is speaking the utterances of God. Whoever serves is to do so as one who is serving by the strength with which God supplies, which we've just talked about. So that in all things, everything we do, friends, God may be glorified through Jesus Christ, to whom belongs the glory and the dominion forever and ever. It's not what I do. Nothing I do is mine. It is all to bring glory to God. Everything we do should be bringing glory to him. We don't live our lives for ourselves. We live them to serve others in love and to bring others to the point where they also fall in love with Jesus and come into the kingdom of God. I do want to say right here that we don't love others in this kind of codependent relationship that they depend on us or even we depend on them for something. We're always directing them towards Jesus. We're always pointing them in the right direction. But we are the hands and feet of God here on earth, and we carry his ultimate purpose, which is to bring all people to the saving knowledge of Christ. If we choose to follow him, to surrender all our selfish thoughts, feelings, and desires to him, it simply shows him that we love him with everything that is within us. There is no greater purpose than that. Want to show God you love him? Do what he wants you to do. But still, I come back to this point, God always gives us a choice. He covers us with grace. He patiently waits for us to sow our wild oats, to run from him and choose to indulge in our own ways. But oh, what a glorious reunion when we come running back to him, fully surrendered. That's when he delights in propelling us forward into our destiny, which always will align with his purposes. So it's not for us to have a bigger house or a bigger car or better clothes. It's to align with God's purposes. Those other things might come along with it for a reason. I don't know what reason, but they might. But the thing that we have to understand is that it's aligning with God's purposes, not ours. And it's only when we are moving in him that that is possible. When we are moving in him, we're finally moving at this phenomenal rate of grace speed. So I love to talk about God's grace so much because there was a time when I wondered, really, what is so amazing about grace? But in my life, I've seen that it's the foundational principle of the kingdom. Grace is undeserved favor, and at the same time, it's this explosive power which can change the world. And friends, right now, the world really needs changing. I'm really aware of that more than ever before. It seems like we're looking to solve all of our problems, all of the world's problems with our own intellect, knowledge, and reasoning. Paul really spoke about these things pretty strongly too in 2 Corinthians 10, 3-5, which is a powerful message, and I will be talking more about this in upcoming podcasts, but I just want to get one principle out of this right now as we wrap up this podcast. Because we have to understand that using our own thinking to go into the battle that we're in between good and evil, or the battle to right wrongs, is not the way to do it, okay? So Paul says, we are human, but we don't wage war as humans do. We use God's mighty weapons, not worldly weapons, to knock down strongholds of human reasoning and to destroy false arguments. So there's a lot more in those two verses and the verse that comes after it. But what I want you to understand right now is we can't fix what's broken in our own lives or in the world fighting with human weapons. And a human weapon I was trying to use was diet. I didn't want to follow God. I wanted to follow a man-made law, a human diet. And that's kind of how people wage war, right? We follow something that humanity says is going to fix us. Or we use weapons, right? If we're in an actual war, we're going to use weapons. We could use, I don't know what kind of weapons that were used in Paul's day, bow and arrows, probably mallets or axes or something. I'm not sure what they were. But these days it's fists knives, guns, and bullets. But sometimes it's also angry, in your face words. It's also our attitude. Guess what? Paul is so right. These weapons that we're trying to use to get our own way never work to change anything. So what are God's mighty weapons that Paul is saying can knock down strongholds, which are really fortresses that we set up so we can get our own way? And I'll talk about that more in an upcoming episode. Also in a book that I'm writing right now, so it's kind of on my mind. But the power that we use to fight the spiritual battle that we're in is grace. It's an expensive mix of God's love that sent Christ to the cross for us and the explosive power of the Holy Spirit to change lives, even ours. All the ammunition we need to fight this war, even the war that we feel like we're in right now, is grace, God's grace. It can change us. It can change the world. It definitely changed mine. I'd love to hear how it's changed yours or how you plan on incorporating it to change yours. So as we wrap up, don't forget to check out Overcomers Christian Weight Loss Academy. If you need help on your journey, I am more than willing to help you in the group. Doors are still open right now there's like a $20 a month off coupon on the page. And there's a bonus there. You get the free download of my book, Sweet Grace, How I Lost 250 Pounds and Stopped Trying to Earn God's Favor, and the Sweet Grace Study Guide. You get both of those as a download versions as a bonus when you enter or join the group. So the link for that will be in the show notes. And I don't think I've mentioned before that this podcast are some of the videos, how do I say this? Some of the videos that go along with this podcast. So right now, as I am recording this podcast, I'm also shooting it as a video, and my team will take those videos and, do all the things they do to them to make them pretty, I guess. I don't know. And they will put them on my new YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Teresa Shields Parker 1. I don't know, maybe there's more than one me. I don't think so, but anyway, that's how we had to title it. And I've also got a lot of other videos on there, along with some TV interviews I've done and Facebook Lives and stuff like that. So that link will also be down in the show notes. So until next week, folks, sweet, sweet grace for your journey.